I was kicked out into a storm because of a lie my daughter-in-law told. My son yelled, "Get out of my house. I do not need a sick dad." I walked away with no money or phone. 3 hours later, the hospital called in horror. My son froze when he heard the voice on the other end. If you have ever felt the sting of betrayal from your own flesh and blood, hit that like button and subscribe because this story is for you. The glass of water was still trembling in my hand when the scream tore through the silence of the house. It was not a normal scream. It was the kind of theatrical, high-pitched shriek designed to shatter glass and summon demons. Megan, my daughter-in-law, was on the linoleum floor of the kitchen, clutching her stomach, her eyes wide with a terror that I knew even in my confused state was completely manufactured. "He pushed me," she wailed, rocking back and forth, her voice cracking with fake hysteria. "He is crazy, Brian. He tried to kill the baby. Help me, baby." What baby? She was not pregnant. Or was she? My mind lately so foggy and slow, struggled to catch up. Megan had mentioned something about morning sickness a week ago, but she had winked when she said it. Now she was acting as if she were 6 months along and I had just thrown her down a flight of stairs. All I had done was reach out to steady her when she tripped over her own slippers. I had not even touched her arm. Before I could even form a sentence to defend myself, the thud of heavy footsteps shook the ceiling. Brian, my son. He did not walk into the kitchen. He exploded into it. He did not look at me. He looked through me. His face was a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. He did not ask what happened. He did not check if his wife was actually injured. He just reacted. His fist flew past my ear and smashed into the drywall, leaving a crater right next to my head. Dust sprinkled onto my shoulder, mixing with the cold sweat that was suddenly breaking out on my forehead. "Dad, you are a sick, twisted old man." Brian roared, his face inches from mine. Spittle flew from his lips. "I have had enough. I have tolerated your forgetfulness. I have tolerated your shaking hands but violence. You attack my pregnant wife in my own house." I looked past him at the crater in the wall. That wall used to hold a framed photo of us fishing in Wisconsin when he was 12. Now it was just broken plaster, just like the promise he made 2 years ago. I wanted to scream that this was my wall, this was my house. The deed transfer was supposed to be a formality, a gift of an $850,000 asset in the heart of Oak Park, Chicago, in exchange for a simple vow to let me live out my final years in peace in the downstairs suite. I had built the equity in this house with 40 years of structural engineering work, designing bridges that withstood hurricanes, but I could not design a defense against this. I did not touch her son. I stammered, my voice sounding weak, pathetic, even to my own ears. She just fell. I tried to help. Liar Megan sobbed from the floor. She pointed a manicured finger at me, her other hand still protectively clutching her flat stomach. He looked at me with these devil eyes. "Brian," he said, "there was not enough room in this house for a baby. He is losing his mind." Brian grabbed the collar of my cardigan. The wool stretched and tore. "Stop lying, Dad." Megan told me about the episodes, the aggression, the forgetting. "You're losing it, Dad. And I am not going to let you hurt my family because your brain is rotting." I looked down at Megan. She was still sobbing into her hands, making these heaving, tragic sounds. But through the gaps in her fingers, I saw it, a smirk, cold, sharp, and triumphant. It lasted for a fraction of a second, just long enough for me to see it, before she buried her face again. She wasn't hurt, she wasn't scared, she was winning. This was the culmination of 6 months of gaslighting. 6 months of me feeling like I was losing my grip on reality. 6 months of Megan bringing me my evening medicine, telling me I had forgotten to take it even though I was sure I had. 6 months of waking up groggy, confused, my hands shaking so bad I could not hold a soldering iron. They told the neighbors I had early onset Alzheimer's. They told the church group I was becoming difficult, and God help me, I had started to believe them. But in that moment, seeing that smirk, something clicked. The fog did not lift, but it parted just enough for me to see the truth. Brian tightened his grip on my sweater, cutting off my air. "You need to leave now, son. Please." "It is a blizzard outside," I choked out. "Listen to me." "I am not listening to any more of your senile ramblings," he shouted. He started dragging me. Not toward my room, not toward the living room couch. He was dragging me toward the back door. The draft coming from the mudroom was already freezing, leaking through the insulation I had been meaning to fix. "Brian, wait. It is 10 below zero." I pleaded, my heels skidding on the hardwood floor I had polished with my own hands for decades. "I do not have my coat." He did not care. He threw the deadbolt open. The wind howled like a wounded animal, blasting snow into the warm kitchen, instantly melting on the floor. The temperature drop was violent, a physical blow to the chest. "Get out!" he hissed. He shoved me. I stumbled backward, my slippers losing traction on the icy concrete of the patio steps. I fell hard, my hips slamming against the metal railing, the snow instantly soaking through my thin trousers. Pain shot up my spine, white and hot. A bundle of fabric hit me in the face. It was my windbreaker, not my heavy winter coat, not my boots. Just a thin nylon windbreaker I used for gardening in the spring. "Don't come back until you are dead or in a straitjacket," Brian yelled over the roar of the wind. The heavy oak door, the door I had installed to keep my family safe, slammed shut. The lock clicked. The sound was final. It sounded like a coffin closing. I stood up, shivering violently. The wind was cutting through my clothes like razor blades. I reached for my pockets, praying for a miracle. Empty, no wallet, no keys, and my phone. I looked through the kitchen window, through the condensation and the swirling snow. I saw my smartphone sitting on the granite counter, right where Megan had placed it earlier when she offered to charge it for me. Inside, the warm light of the kitchen glowed. I saw Brian hugging Megan. He was comforting her. She buried her face in his chest, her shoulders shaking. From the outside, it looked like a loving husband protecting his wife from a monster. But I knew the truth now. The monster was not outside in the snow. The monsters were in the kitchen, drinking my wine, living in my house, and celebrating my eviction. I banged on the glass. "Brian, please. I will freeze." Brian looked at the window. He did not flinch. He reached out and pulled the blinds down. Darkness. I was 70 years old. It was a Chicago blizzard. I was wearing slippers and a cardigan. And my son had just sentenced me to death. I turned around. The backyard was a white void. The fence was buried. The only way out was to walk to keep moving. If I stayed here curled up on the doormat, I would be a frozen statue by morning. That is what they wanted. I could feel it in my bones, colder than the wind. They did not just want me out. They wanted me gone. I took the first step into the deep snow. My slipper came off. I had to dig it out with frozen fingers. I put it back on and tied a plastic grocery bag I found in the recycling bin around my foot. It was pathetic protection, but it was all I had. I have to make it to the gas station. I whispered to myself, my teeth chattering so hard it hurt. 2 miles. Just 2 miles. I started walking 1 foot in front of the other. The wind pushed me back, trying to knock me down. Every step was a battle. But with every step, the confusion in my head began to clear. Maybe it was the adrenaline. Maybe it was the cold shock flushing the drugs out of my system. But as I walked into the white darkness, a thought began to form, sharp and crystalline as the ice on my eyelashes. They think I am weak. They think I am senile. They think this is the end of Harold Foster. I wrapped the thin windbreaker tighter around my chest. They were wrong. This was not the end. This was the beginning of the storm, and they had no idea what was coming back to them. The wind was not just moving air anymore. It had become a physical weight, a solid wall of ice pressing against my chest with every step I took. The temperature had plummeted to 15 degrees below zero, and the wind chill made it feel like the surface of Mars. I was wearing a thin cotton cardigan, pajama bottoms, and house slippers wrapped in plastic grocery bags. It was a joke. It was a death sentence disguised as a walk 2 miles. That was the distance to the nearest gas station on Route 41. In a car with the heater running, it was a 4-minute drive. On foot in a blizzard at 70 years old, it felt like a journey across the Arctic. My toes had gone numb within the first 100 yards. Now they burned. A searing, rhythmic pain that shot up my shins every time my foot broke through the crust of the snow. I kept my head down, chin buried in my chest, trying to shield my face. But the wind was relentless. It found every gap in my clothing, slicing through the fabric like razor blades. My eyelashes were heavy with ice, forcing my eyes halfway shut. The world was reduced to a small white circle of visibility around my feet. Left foot, right foot, do not stop. If I stopped, I died. As the physical pain mounted, my mind began to drift. It retreated from the freezing reality into the warm, murky memories of the last 6 months. I saw Megan's face floating in the white void. Her smile always a little too tight, a little too bright. "Dad, it is time for your medicine," she would say every evening after dinner. I remembered the routine perfectly. A glass of warm milk and 2 blue pills. "What are these for again?" Megan I would ask. "They are for your memory, Dad," she would reply, her voice dripping with that condescending sweetness one uses for a toddler. The doctor said, "Your brain is shrinking. We need to slow it down. You forgot to turn off the stove again today." Remember, I did not remember leaving the stove on. In fact, I distinctly remembered checking it twice. But Megan had been so sure. She had shown me the dial turned to high. Had she turned it herself? The doubt had been a constant companion lately, a worm eating away at my confidence. "You are getting worse, Harry," she would whisper to Brian when they thought I was asleep in front of the television. "He does not even know what day it is. He gets aggressive." I am scared for the baby. I believed them. I believed I was broken. I believed my mind, which had calculated load-bearing vectors for skyscrapers and suspension bridges, was turning into mush. I had accepted the diagnosis of early-onset Alzheimer's because I trusted them. They were my family. Why would they lie? But then a strange thing happened. A gust of wind hit me so hard I staggered sideways, nearly falling into a snowbank. The cold air filled my lungs, sharp and shocking, and suddenly my mind felt clear. It was the first time in months I felt this awake. The fog that had shrouded my brain, making every thought feel like wading through molasses, was lifting. It was the cold. The extreme shock to my system was overriding everything else. But it was more than that. I had not taken the pills tonight. The realization hit me harder than the wind. Tonight, because of the argument, because of the chaos, Megan had not given me the warm milk. She had not given me the blue pills. And for the first time in half a year, I could remember. I remembered the look in her eyes when I signed the deed transfer. It wasn't gratitude. It was hunger. I remembered the way she would intercept the mail-hiding bank statements. I remembered her intercepting calls from my old friends, telling them I was too sick to talk. It was not Alzheimer's. It was sedation. They were drugging me. They were keeping me pliable, confused, and weak so they could strip me of everything I owned. And tonight, when they finally had what they wanted, they threw me away. Rage flared in my chest, hot and violent. It gave me a burst of energy. I walked faster, ignoring the screaming protest of my frozen legs. I was not a sick old man. I was a victim of a slow-motion murder attempt, and I was going to survive to make them pay. I looked up, trying to find a landmark. The street lights were dim halos in the swirling snow. I was only halfway there. My body was failing. The adrenaline spike began to fade, replaced by a heavy, lethargic exhaustion. The cold was seeping into my bones, turning my blood to sludge. My right foot caught on something buried under the snow. A branch, a piece of ice. I did not have the strength to correct my balance. I went down hard. My ankle twisted with a sickening crunch that I heard over the howling wind. I cried out the sound swallowed instantly by the storm. I tried to stand, but my leg collapsed under me. The pain was blinding, a white-hot spike driving up from my ankle to my hip. I couldn't walk. I couldn't even stand. I lay in the snow, the cold instantly soaking through my clothes. This is it, I thought. This is how Harold Foster dies. Not in a warm bed surrounded by loved ones, but in a ditch, murdered by his own son's greed. No. I gritted my teeth. I dragged myself forward. I dug my elbows into the snow and pulled. My broken ankle dragged behind me, a dead weight. 1 inch, then another. I was crawling. I was an animal, but I was still moving. I saw lights ahead, twin beams cutting through the white curtain. A vehicle. I tried to wave, but my arms were too heavy. I tried to shout, but my throat was frozen shut. I was right on the edge of the road. If the driver didn't see me, if he drifted just a few inches to the right, I would be crushed. The lights got brighter. The rumble of a heavy engine vibrated through the ground into my chest. It was a truck, a big pickup with a plow attachment on the front. It was moving fast, too fast for the conditions. I squeezed my eyes shut and braced for the impact. I thought about my wife, Catherine. I hoped she was waiting for me on the other side. I hoped she would forgive me for letting our son become a monster. The air horn blasted a deafening sound that shook my very soul. Tires screeched on ice. The plow blade stopped inches from my face, kicking up a spray of ice that stung my skin. Silence for a second. Then the heavy door of the truck slammed open. Boots crunched on the snow running. "Holy Mother of God!" a voice shouted. It was rough, deep, the voice of a man who had smoked too many cigarettes and shouted over too many engines. Strong hands grabbed my shoulders. I looked up. He was wearing a faded army jacket and a trucker hat. His face was weathered, lined with hard years, but his eyes were wide with genuine horror. "Buddy, are you alive?" he yelled, leaning close to my face. I tried to nod. I couldn't feel my face. He didn't ask questions. He didn't ask why an old man was crawling on the highway in a blizzard. He just acted. He scooped me up in his arms like I weighed nothing. I was a large man, or I used to be, but the last 6 months had whittled me down to bone and skin. He carried me to the cab of the truck. It was high up. He hoisted me into the passenger seat and slammed the door. The heat inside hit me like a physical blow. It was overwhelming. My skin began to prickle and burn as the blood tried to rush back to the surface. The driver jumped in the other side. He immediately stripped off his heavy jacket and wrapped it around me. He cranked the heater to the maximum. "You are hypothermic," he said, his voice tight. "I am taking you to St. Mary's. It is 10 minutes out. Stay with me, old-timer." "What is your name, Harold?" I whispered. My teeth were chattering so violently, I thought they would crack. "Okay, Harold. I am Jim. I was a medic in the Marines. You are in bad shape, but I have seen worse. Just keep your eyes open." He put the truck in gear and gunned at the tires, spinning for a second before gripping the road. We shot forward. As the warmth began to penetrate my core, the pain in my ankle became unbearable. I groaned, but the pain was good. Pain meant I was alive. Pain meant I wasn't frozen yet. Jim looked over at me, concern etched into his features. "Do you have family, Harold? Someone I can call to meet us there?" The question hung in the warm air of the cab. Family. The word tasted like ash in my mouth. I thought of Brian's face as he shoved me. I thought of Megan's smirk. If Jim called them, they would come. Not to save me, but to finish the job. They would tell the doctors I was senile. They would take me back to that house and make sure I never woke up again. I reached out my hand, trembling uncontrollably, and grabbed the sleeve of Jim's flannel shirt. My grip was weak, but I put every ounce of my remaining will into it. No, I wheezed my voice, sounding like grinding stones. Jim frowned. No what? No family. I looked him dead in the eye. The fog in my brain was gone, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. Do not call my son, I said, forcing the words out one by one. Do not let them know I am alive. Jim stared at me for a second, reading the terror and the hate in my eyes. He saw something there that made him stiffen. He nodded slowly. He wants me dead, I whispered, and then the darkness finally took me. I slumped against the door, the vibration of the engine, the last thing I should have felt before I slipped into the black. Here is the continuation of the script following your specific instructions and the provided outline. The line went dead with a click that echoed in the sterile silence of the hospital room. Is he dead yet? The question hung in the air, toxic and heavy. My son, the boy I had taught to ride a bike. The man I'd entrusted with my legacy had asked it with the casual annoyance of someone ordering a pizza. And then the background noise, the clinking glasses, the laughter. They were celebrating. They were toasting to my frozen corpse while the blizzard howled outside. Dr. Patel stared at the phone, his face a mask of professional shock. The nurse looked like she might be sick. But I felt a strange cold calm settle over me. It was the calm of a structural engineer realizing a bridge is about to collapse and knowing exactly which beam to cut to bring it down safely, or in this case, destructively. I did not cry. The tears I had shed in the snow were the last ones Brian would ever get from me. Can I use that phone again? I asked, my voice steady, stripped of any tremor. Dr. Patel nodded slowly, handing the device back to me. He didn't ask who I was calling. He seemed to understand that the time for medical intervention was over and the time for surgical precision had begun. I dialed a number I hadn't used in 2 years, but my fingers remembered the pattern perfectly. Sarah Jenkins, my late wife's niece, the family bulldog, a lawyer who could smell a lie through 3 feet of concrete. Sarah, I said when she picked up on the second ring. It's Harry. Uncle Harry. There was a pause, a sharp intake of breath. Harry, oh my God. Where have you been? I have been leaving messages for 6 months. Megan told me you were in an assisted living facility in Florida. She said you didn't want to be disturbed. Florida. Another lie. Another brick in the wall they had built around me. I am not in Florida, Sarah. I am at St. Mary's Hospital, and I need you now. Is it your heart? No? I said, looking at the toxicology report Dr. Patel had left on the bedside table. It is my family. Listen to me very carefully, Sarah. I need you to come here immediately. I need you to bring your laptop with access to the county property records. I need you to bring a copy of the deed transfer I signed 2 years ago. And Sarah, bring a digital voice recorder. Harry, you are scaring me. What is going on? They tried to kill me. Sarah, they poisoned me. And tonight they threw me out into a blizzard to finish the job. I heard the sound of keys jingling, a chair scraping back. I am on my way. I will be there in 20 minutes. I hung up and looked at Dr. Patel. How long can you keep me here before you have to officially discharge me or admit me? I can admit you for observation for the toxin levels. Dr. Patel said, his eyes narrowing as he caught onto my train of thought. That buys you 24 hours, maybe 48. Good. I need to know what they are doing. I need to know why today. Why did they escalate it tonight? I turned to the nurse who was still standing by the door, wringing her hands. Can you get me a laptop or a tablet? Anything with internet access. She rushed out and returned a minute later with an iPad. I thanked her and logged into my bank portal. My hands were stiff, but they obeyed my commands. Password incorrect. I tried again. Incorrect. They changed it. Of course they did. Megan had power of attorney. I had signed it 3 months ago in a drug-induced haze, thinking I was signing a consent form for a flu shot. I logged into my email. Thank God for two-factor authentication linked to my old flip phone number, which I had forwarded to my email years ago. I got in. I checked the notifications. Bank transfer alerts. Withdrawal confirmation. Withdrawal confirmation. Withdrawal confirmation. My retirement account, $450,000. The nest egg I had saved for 30 years of bridge inspections and structural consults. Balance zero. It was gone, all of it, transferred 3 days ago to an account I didn't recognize. I felt a burn in my chest, but I pushed it down. Money was just money. I could make more money. But then I opened the Zillow app. I didn't know why I did it, just a hunch. A gut feeling born of the desperation in Brian's voice when he shoved me out the door. I typed in my address. 42 Oakwood Lane. The listing popped up instantly. Coming soon. Open house tomorrow. Sunday 10:00 a.m. My breath caught in my throat. The photos were professional staged. The living room looked pristine. My favorite armchair was gone. The kitchen where I had just been assaulted was gleaming. And the price $850,000. Cash offers preferred for quick closing. They weren't just killing me, they were liquidating me. They needed to sell the house fast. That's why they needed me gone tonight. They couldn't have a senile old man wandering around during an open house telling prospective buyers that he lived in the basement. They needed a vacant property. They needed me dead. So the life insurance policy, which I was sure they had maxed out, would pay off the mortgage and leave them with $1 million cash plus the house sale. It was a perfect plan except for one variable. I survived the storm. Sarah burst into the room 20 minutes later, shaking snow from her coat. She looked exactly as I remembered. Sharp features, intense eyes, a woman who treated the law like a weapon. When she saw me bruised cast on my leg, IVs in my arm. Her expression crumbled for a second before hardening into granite. "Who did this?" she asked, her voice low and dangerous. "Brian and Megan," I said. She opened her bag and pulled out a laptop. She didn't waste time with "I told you so" or "I am sorry." She went to work. She pulled up the property records. "Okay, Harry, I see the listing. They are moving fast. The title is in Brian's name. You signed the quitclaim deed 2 years ago." I nodded. I did. I trusted him. She scanned the document on her screen, her eyes darting back and forth. Then she stopped. A slow, predatory smile spread across her face. "Harry," she said, looking up at me. "Did you read the addendum I attached to the deed, the one I insisted on, even though Brian complained it was unnecessary paperwork?" I frowned. I remembered Sarah arguing with Brian. I remembered her telling me, "Uncle Harry, just in case." "The life estate clause," I whispered. "Exactly," Sarah said, tapping the screen. "You didn't just give him the house, you retained a life estate. That means even though Brian holds the title, you hold the right of possession until the day you die." "What does that mean for the sale?" Dr. Patel asked, leaning in. Sarah turned the laptop so we could see. "It means Brian owns the walls, but Harry owns the right to live inside them. Brian cannot sell the property free and clear without Harry's signature releasing his life estate. If he tries to sell it as a vacant property without disclosing Harry's rights, it is fraud," I finished. "It is void," Sarah corrected. "And more importantly, there is a reversion clause. If the grantee that is Brian attempts to forcefully remove the life tenant that is you, or acts in a way that endangers the life tenant's ability to occupy the property, the ownership reverts back to me." I said, the memory of the legal jargon coming back automatically. Sarah confirmed Harry legally that house is already yours again. They just don't know it yet. And because they listed it for sale without your signature, they have committed real estate fraud. I looked at the toxicology report on the table, then at the Zillow listing on the screen. They want an open house, I said softly. Sarah looked at me, understanding dawning in her eyes. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., I said they want to show the world a perfect empty house. Sarah grinned. It would be a shame if the owner showed up. Dr. S. Patel cleared his throat. Harold, you are in no condition to leave the arsenic levels. You need chelation therapy. You need rest. I looked at the doctor. I have been dying for 6 months, doctor. I can wait one more day to start living. I need to go back there. But why? Sarah asked. We can call the police now. We have enough to arrest them tonight. No, I said firmly. If we arrest them now, they will claim it was a misunderstanding. They will claim they didn't know about the poison. They will claim they were just selling the house to pay for my care. They will spin it. I leaned forward, ignoring the pain in my ankle. I want to catch them in the act. I want them to sell the house. I want them to sign the papers. I want them to think they have won. And then when they are at the very top of their mountain of lies, I want to push them off. I looked at Sarah. Can you get me a suit, my funeral suit? It is at the dry cleaners on 5th. Megan never picked it up. Sarah nodded. I can get it, and I need a cane. A nice one. Something heavy. I looked at Dr. Patel. Doctor, I need you to discharge me tomorrow morning early, and I need a copy of the toxicology report. Certified, Dr. Patel hesitated, looking at my chart, then at my face. He saw that stopping me would be impossible. I cannot discharge you, he said carefully. But if you were to leave against medical advice, I couldn't stop you. And I might ensure you have a copy of your records with you. Thank you. I lay back against the pillows. The plan was forming in my mind, complex and beautiful, a structural collapse controlled demolition. Sarah called Brian in the morning. I said, call him yes. Tell him the hospital called you. Tell him I am alive but confused. Tell him I am rambling about going home. Make him think I am exactly the senile old man he wants me to be. Why? Sarah asked. Because I want them to bring me home, I said, closing my eyes. I want them to bring the Trojan horse right into the living room. They need to believe they are still in control. They need to believe that one more dose of poison tonight will finish the job before the buyers arrive. You are going to let them poison you again? Sarah asked, horrified. I opened my eyes. No, I am going to let them try. And I am going to record every second of it. The storm outside was still raging, battering the hospital windows. But inside, I was calm. The victim was dead. Harold Foster, the father, was dead. The man in the hospital bed was someone else. Someone who was ready to bring the roof down. The sterile fluorescent lights of the emergency room hummed with a low, irritating buzz that seemed to drill directly into my temples. Dr. Patel stood by the foot of my bed. His clipboard clutched to his chest like a shield. The toxicology report lay on the side table, a piece of paper that had just redefined my entire existence. Arsenic benzoazepines. My daughter-in-law had been slowly erasing me, and my son had been watching it happen. We need to contact your next of kin, Mr. Foster, the head nurse said gently. Her name tag read Brenda, and her eyes held that weary kindness of someone who has seen too much tragedy in one shift. We need to inform them you are here and stable. I looked at the phone on the wall. The plastic was beige and cold. I knew exactly who she would call. Brian, my emergency contact. The man who had thrown me into a snowbank less than 3 hours ago. Call him. I croaked, my voice sounding like gravel grinding together. But put it on speaker, I want to hear him. Brenda hesitated, glancing at Dr. Patel. The doctor gave a barely perceptible nod. He was curious too. He had seen the bruises on my arms, the malnutrition, the poison in my blood. He knew this was not a normal family dynamic. Brenda lifted the receiver and punched in the number. The tone of the dial was loud in the quiet room. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3. I closed my eyes, a tiny, stupid part of my heart, praying that he would not answer, that he was out searching for me in the storm, that he was consumed with guilt. The line clicked open. Yeah. A voice barked. It was Brian. But it wasn't the worried voice of a son whose elderly father is missing in a blizzard. It was loud, slurring, and impatient. In the background, I heard it. The unmistakable sound of pop music laughter, the clinking of glass. A party. Mr. Foster. This is Brenda from St. Mary's Hospital Emergency Department. The nurse said, her voice professional and firm. We have your father, Harold Foster, here. He was brought in by a Brian, cut her off with a laugh that chilled me more than the freezing wind outside. Is he dead yet? He asked. The room went dead silent. Brenda's mouth fell open. Dr. Patel took a sharp step forward, his face darkening with shock. Excuse me? Brenda stammered clearly, thinking she had misheard. I said, Is the old man dead? Brian repeated louder, this time his voice dripping with annoyance. Look, if he is not dead, do not call this number. We are in the middle of something important here. We are busy celebrating. I mean, sorting out his paperwork. Call me back when there is a body to identify. Click. The dial tone hummed a flat, monotonous sound that signaled the end of my life as Harold Foster, the father. Brenda slowly hung up the phone, her hand trembling. She looked at me, her eyes wide with horror and pity. She opened her mouth to speak, to offer some empty platitude, but I raised my hand to stop her. I did not want pity. Pity was for victims, and I was done being a victim. The silence in the room was heavy, suffocating. I could feel Dr. Patel watching me, waiting for the breakdown, waiting for the tears of a broken old man who just realized his son wanted him dead. But the tears did not come. Instead, a cold, hard clarity washed over me. It started in my chest and spread to my fingertips, steadying the tremors that had plagued me for months. That phone call was the final piece of evidence. It was the liberation I didn't know I needed. My son was not grieving. He was celebrating. He was drinking champagne in the house I paid for, toasting to my demise so he could sell the roof over my head. I sat up straighter in the bed, wincing as the movement pulled at the IV line in my arm. The pain was sharp, grounding. Doctor, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I need to borrow that phone one more time. Dr. Patel looked at me, his expression shifting from pity to something else. Respect, perhaps, or maybe fear? He saw the change in my eyes. The confusion of the drugs was gone, burned away by the adrenaline of pure, distilled rage. Of course, Mr. Foster, he said softly. Take all the time you need. I reached out and took the receiver. My fingers, usually clumsy these days, felt precise. I dialed a number I hadn't called in 2 years, but one that was etched into my memory. It rang once. Then a sharp professional voice answered, Sarah Jenkins. Sarah, I said. It's Uncle Harry. There was a pause on the other end, a silence filled with shock. Sarah was my late wife's niece. She was a pit bull of a lawyer, the kind of woman who ate contracts for breakfast. We had drifted apart after Megan started intercepting my calls, telling the family I was too sick for visitors. Harry? She gasped. Oh my God. Harry, where have you been? Megan told us you were in a facility in Florida. She said you didn't remember us anymore. Florida. Another lie? They had buried me alive while I was still sitting in my own living room. I am not in Florida, Sarah, I said, my voice cutting through the air like a knife. I am at St. Mary's Hospital in Oak Park, and I am very much lucid. What happened? Are you okay? No, I'm not okay. They tried to kill me. Sarah, Brian, and Megan. They poisoned me, and tonight they threw me out into a blizzard to freeze to death so they could sell the house. I heard the sound of a chair scraping back violently on the other end. I heard the rustle of papers. Sarah didn't ask if I was sure. She didn't ask for proof. She knew Megan, she knew Brian, and she knew me. I am coming, she said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming dangerous. I will be there in 20 minutes. Should I bring the police? No, I said quickly, not yet. The police are a blunt instrument. I need a scalpel. What do you need, Harry? I need you to go to your safe. I need you to get the file from 2018. The deed transfer for the house on Oakwood Lane and the will. Bring everything. I heard the jingle of car keys. I am leaving now. And Sarah? I added, looking at the dark window, where the snow was still battering the glass. Yes, Harry. Bring a voice recorder, a good one. Why, she asked. Because I am not dead. I whispered, staring at my reflection in the darkened glass. But there are 2 people in Oak Park who are going to wish I was. I hung up the phone. The dial tone returned, but this time it didn't sound like an ending. It sounded like a countdown. I looked at Dr. Patel. He was still standing there watching me. Doctor, I said, I need you to do something for me. I need you to document everything. Every milligram of poison in my blood, every bruise, every sign of neglect. Make it undeniable. I will, Harold, he promised. I will run a full panel. We will have a paper trail that could bury them. Good, I said, leaning back against the pillows. I closed my eyes, but I didn't sleep. I visualized the house on Oakwood Lane. My house. I visualized the layout, the exits, the hidden safe, and the floorboards that Brian didn't know about. I visualized the structural beams I had reinforced myself 40 years ago. Brian thought he had thrown out trash. He didn't realize he had just declared war on the architect. And tomorrow, when the sun rose, I was going to bring the whole structure down on top of his head. 2 a.m. The hospital was quiet, a silence that felt heavy and expectant, broken only by the rhythmic beeping of the monitor next to my bed and the distant squeak of nurse shoes in the hallway. I was sitting up, my eyes burning with exhaustion, but wide open. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the snow, felt the cold, and heard my son laughing on the phone. The door to my room pushed open softly. Sarah Jenkins slipped inside. She looked different from the polished lawyer I remembered. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. Her coat was thrown hastily over a sweatshirt, and her eyes were red-rimmed. But in her hands, she clutched a laptop bag like it was a briefcase full of nuclear codes. She did not say hello. She just walked to the bed, pulled up a chair, and sat down, her knees touching the side of the mattress. She looked at my face, at the bruises, at the cast on my leg. She reached out and squeezed my hand. Her grip was tight, trembling with a fury she was trying hard to contain. I brought everything, she whispered. Show me, I said. She opened the laptop. The screen glowed blue in the semi-darkness, illuminating our faces. She typed in her credentials, her fingers flying across the keys. She pulled up the county records first, then navigated to the banking portal. Harry, she said, her voice tight. I used the emergency access you granted me years ago for the estate planning. I logged into your main retirement account, the Vanguard Fund. I nodded. I knew what was coming, but knowing it and seeing it were 2 different things. That account held $450,000. It was 40 years of standing on construction sites in freezing rain. 40 years of double shifts. 40 years of saving every penny so Catherine and I could travel, so we could be safe. Sarah turned the screen toward me. The balance was 0. Not a few dollars. 0. It was drained 3 days ago, Sarah said, pointing to the transaction history. A single wire transfer. Who authorized it? I asked, my voice sounding hollow. She clicked on a document icon. A PDF opened. It was a digital copy of the transfer authorization. At the bottom was a signature. It was shaky, barely legible, but it was unmistakably an attempt at my name. And next to it, a stamp. Power of attorney. Megan Foster. She used the POA, Sarah said, her voice dripping with disgust. The one you signed 3 months ago. I stared at the screen. I remembered that day. I had been sick, so sick. Megan had told me it was a stomach bug. She had brought me soup that tasted metallic. Then she had brought me papers. Just insurance forms, Dad, she had said. Just so I can pick up your prescriptions. I signed my life away because I was drugged, I whispered. It gets worse, Sarah said. She closed the banking tab and opened a new window. She typed Zillow into the search bar. Then she typed my address. 42 Oakwood Lane. The page loaded, my heart hammered against my ribs. There was my house, but it wasn't my house anymore. The photos were slick, professional, high-define. They must have taken them days ago while I was asleep or groggy in my room. The living room was staged with furniture I didn't recognize. My old recliner, the one with the coffee stain on the arm where Catherine used to rest her mug, was gone, replaced by a trendy beige sofa. And there in bold letters across the main photo, coming soon. Open house Sunday, 100 a.m. Sunday. That was tomorrow. Today. Sarah scrolled down to the description. Stunning colonial in the heart of Oak Park. Fully renovated, pristine condition. Immediate occupancy available. Vacant possession. Vacant possession. The words hit me like a physical blow. That was why. That was why they had escalated. That was why the violence happened tonight. They didn't just want me gone, Sarah said, reading my thoughts. They needed you gone. You cannot have an open house with the owner living in the downstairs suite. You cannot sell a house as vacant if there is an elderly man walking around telling buyers he has a life estate. They needed the house empty, I said. They needed to scrub me out of it. Sarah clicked on the price history. Listed for $850,000, priced for a quick sale. Harry, why do they need cash this fast? Brian has a good job. Megan works. I looked at the screen at the sterile, empty photos of the home I'd built. Brian didn't have a good job. Not anymore. I had overheard whispers on the phone months ago, calls from numbers he didn't recognize. He would go into the garage to talk, his voice hushed and frantic. I had thought it was work stress. Now I knew better. Gambling, I said, or bad investments. He is in debt, Sarah, deep debt. That is why they are desperate. That is why they couldn't wait for me to die of natural causes. They needed the equity, Sarah said, her lawyer brain connecting the dots. They sell the house for $850. They take the cash, they pay off the debts, and if you died in the storm, they get the life insurance too. I finished $1 million plus the house. They would walk away with nearly $2 million debt-free, and I would be just a tragic accident, an old man who wandered off in a storm. I looked at the photo of my bedroom. My books were gone. My drafting table was gone. The room was staged as a home office. They had erased me. To the world, Harold Foster didn't exist. Sarah slammed the laptop shut. This is attempted murder, Harry. This is fraud. This is elder abuse. We are calling the police right now. Detective Miller is a friend of mine. We can have them in cuffs before sunrise. No, I said. Sarah stared at me. Harry, look at you. They poisoned you. They threw you out to freeze. You could have died. But I didn't. I said, my voice hard. And if we arrest them now, Brian will play the victim. He will say he didn't know about the poison. He will say Megan did it all. Or she will say I was aggressive, and she acted in self-defense. They have had months to plant the seeds of my insanity in the neighborhood. I sat up, swinging my legs over the side of the bed. The room spun for a second, then steadied. I want them to feel safe, Sarah. I want them to think they won. I want them to open that door tomorrow morning to the buyers. I want them to stand in that living room smiling, thinking they are rich. And then I want to walk in. You want to catch them in the act of selling the house? Sarah realized. I want to destroy them. I said, not just legally, I want to destroy their reputation. I want to destroy their lies in front of witnesses. I want the neighbors, the buyers, the realtor, everyone to see exactly who they are. Sarah looked at me for a long, long moment. Then slowly, a smile touched her lips. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a lawyer who just realized she has a winning hand. The life estate, she said. The life estate? I agreed. The deed says the property reverts to me if they try to sell it without my signature. Sarah opened her bag again. She pulled out a thick file folder. I brought the original deed and the toxicology report Dr. Patel gave me and the bank records showing the theft. Perfect, I said. But Harry, she said, her expression turning serious again. To pull this off, you have to go back there. You have to let them take you home. I know it is dangerous. If they realize you know they won't, I said, because I am going to give the performance of my life. I am going to be the confused, sick, broken old man they think I am. I am going to be the Trojan horse. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 3:00 a.m. The sun would be up in a few hours. The open house was at 10:00. Call Brian, I said. Tell him the hospital found me. Tell him I am babbling. Tell him I am asking for him. Tell him. Tell him I don't remember anything about tonight. Sarah pulled out her phone. Her thumb hovered over the screen. You are sure about this? I looked at the laptop at the coming soon banner on my house. Make the call, Sarah? Let's bring the dead man home. Sarah was pacing the small hospital room like a caged tiger. Her heels clicked rhythmically on the linoleum, a metronome of pure, unadulterated rage. She still had the toxicology report clutched in her hand, the paper crinkling with every step. Harry, we cannot just play games with this, she said, her voice tight with frustration. This is attempted murder. This is grand larceny. We call Detective Miller right now. We get a warrant. We have them arrested before breakfast. Why wait? Why give them even one more hour of freedom? I watched her, my eyes heavy with fatigue, but my mind sharper than it had been in months. The poison was still in my blood, making my limbs feel like lead. But the burning coal of betrayal in my chest kept me focused. Because arrest is too easy, Sarah, I said quietly. She stopped pacing and looked at me incredulous. Too easy. They tried to kill you. If we arrest them now, I explained, leaning forward despite the pain in my ribs, they will get a lawyer. They will get bail. Brian will cry in front of a judge and say he was manipulated. Megan will play the pregnant victim, even though we know it is a lie. They might serve a few years, maybe less, with a plea deal. And when they get out, they will still be young enough to start over. I took a breath, the air whistling in my lungs. I do not want them to just go to jail, Sarah. I want them to lose the one thing that matters to them more than my life. I want them to lose the money. I want them destitute. I want to burn their future to the ground so thoroughly that nothing will ever grow there again. Sarah stared at me. She had known me as the gentle uncle, the man who built birdhouses and fixed leaky faucets. She had never seen this side of me, the side that calculated stress loads and failure points, the side that knew exactly where to place the dynamite to bring a building down. She walked back to the bed and sat down, tossing the toxicology report onto the blanket. Okay, Harry, you want to hit them where it hurts, how they have the title to the house. You signed the quitclaim deed 2 years ago. Legally, Brian owns the property. If he sells it tomorrow morning at the open house, the money is his. We can sue for it later, but once that cash is gone, it is gone. I shook my head slowly. A ghost of a smile touched my lips. It was not a happy smile. Brian has the title. Yes, I said. But he does not own the house. Not really. Sarah frowned, her lawyer brain spinning. What do you mean it was a standard transfer? I closed my eyes and let the memory wash over me. It was 5 years ago. My wife Catherine was sitting on the back porch of that house on Oakwood Lane. She was already sick then, the cancer eating away at her strength, but her mind was as sharp as a razor. She was watching Brian play in the yard with Megan. Even back then, there was something about the way Megan looked at the house, measuring it, calculating its worth, that unsettled Catherine. Harry, she had said, her voice weak but firm. Promise me something. When I am gone, you will be lonely. You will want to trust them. You will want to give them everything because that is who you are. They are good kids, Kathy, I had argued. Brian is weak. She had replied, her eyes sad. And Megan is hungry. Do not trust anyone. Absolutely, Harry. Not even family. If you ever sign the house over to them, you make sure you keep a key that they cannot take away. I opened my eyes and looked at Sarah. When we drafted that deed 2 years ago, I asked you to add a clause, I said. Do you remember? Sarah blinked. She opened the folder on her lap and pulled out the original deed document. She flipped past the standard legal descriptions, past the signatures to the addendum on the last page. Her eyes scanned the dense legal text. The life estate, she whispered. Read it, I said. Sarah cleared her throat. The girder. Harold Foster reserves unto himself a life estate in the subject property for the duration of his natural life. The grantee, Brian Foster, shall hold the remainder interest only. The grantor retains the exclusive right of possession, use, and enjoyment of the property during his lifetime. She looked up. Okay, so you have the right to live there. We knew that. But if they sell it, keep reading, I commanded. Paragraph 4, Section B, the reversion clause. Sarah looked back at the paper, her finger traced the lines. In the event that the remainder man, Brian Foster, attempts to sell, mortgage, or otherwise encumber the property without the express written consent of the life tenant, or attempts to forcefully remove the life tenant from the premises or acts in any manner that endangers the life tenant's right to quiet enjoyment. She stopped. Her mouth fell open slightly. Then this deed shall become null and void, and the fee simple title shall automatically revert to the grantor, Harold Foster, effectively immediately. She looked at me, her eyes wide with shock and admiration. It reverts, she said. It goes back to you automatically. I nodded. Catherine insisted. She said it was my insurance policy. I never thought I would have to use it. I thought it was just legal paranoia. But tonight when Brian threw me out into the snow and he physically removed me from the premises, he triggered the reversion. Sarah finished, a grin spreading across her face. He doesn't own the house anymore. As of 3 hours ago, he is trespassing, and tomorrow, I said, leaning back, he is going to try to sell a house he does not own to a cash buyer. Sarah started to laugh. It was a dark, sharp sound. Oh, Harry, that is fraud. That is felony fraud. If he signs that sales contract, he is looking at 10 years easy, plus the attempted murder charges we will pile on top. And Megan, I asked. Sarah looked at the document again. Megan witnessed the deed. She signed right here. But knowing Megan, she saw the dollar signs and didn't read the fine print. She thinks a life estate just means she has to wait until you die to get the money. She doesn't know about the reversion. She doesn't know that by kicking you out, she pulled the pin on a grenade she is holding in her hand. She thinks I am just a guest in her house, I said bitterly. She thinks she was smart to drug me, to make me pliable, to get me to sign the power of attorney. She thought she had covered every base, but she forgot the one thing Catherine taught me, I said, looking at the ceiling. Never give away your leverage. Sarah closed the folder with a snap. This is it, Harry. This is the weapon. We don't need the police to stop the sale. We just need to let them hang themselves. Exactly, I said. I want them to stand in that living room tomorrow. I want them to shake hands with the buyers. I want them to sign the preliminary papers. I want them to taste the champagne. And then Sarah said, her eyes gleaming, you walk in. And then I walk in. I agreed. Sarah stood up, energized. Okay, I need to get things ready. I need to make copies of this deed. I need to get the recorder. I need to call Detective Miller and tell him to be on standby near the house tomorrow morning, but not to move until we give the signal." She paused at the door. "You have to go back there, Harry. You have to endure them for a few more hours." "If they try to give you more pills, Akid," I said, "I will be the confused, stumbling old man they expect. I will be the perfect victim. Can you do it?" She asked, concern flickering in her eyes. "You are weak, Harry." "The poison?" I looked at my hands. They were trembling. "Yes, but not from weakness, from anticipation." "I built skyscrapers, Sarah," I said softly. "I know how to hold a load until the very last second. I can do this." She nodded and slipped out of the room. I was alone again with the beeping monitor. I looked at the toxicology report on the table. Arsenic. They had been feeding me poison in my warm milk, smiling as I drank it. They had turned my own home into a gas chamber. I closed my eyes and pictured the house on Oakwood Lane. I pictured the open house sign in the yard. I pictured Brian's face when he realized that the millions he thought he had secured had just vanished into thin air. I wasn't afraid of the storm anymore. I wasn't afraid of the cold. I was the storm, and I was coming home. I sat in the wheelchair by the hospital entrance, a prop in my own play. The sun was just starting to crack the horizon, painting the snow-covered parking lot in shades of bruised purple and gray. It was 6 near in the morning, 4 hours, until the open house 4 hours, until the trap would spring. Brenda, the head nurse, stood behind me, her hand resting protectively on my shoulder. She was a good woman. She didn't know the full legal complexities of life estates and reversion clauses, but she knew a son who wanted his father dead when she heard one. She had made the second call exactly as I instructed. "Mr. Foster?" She had said, her voice ice cold. "Your father is being discharged. If you are not here to collect him within 30 minutes, I am legally required to file a report with Adult Protective Services for elderly abandonment. The police will be notified to conduct a welfare check at your residence." It was the nuclear option. Brian and Megan could handle a confused old man. They could handle a storm, but they could not handle a police investigation on the morning they were trying to sell a stolen house for cash. An investigation would freeze the title. It would scare off the buyers. It would ruin everything. "They are pulling up," Brenda whispered. "Black SUV. I saw them." The massive black Range Rover that Brian had bought 6 months ago, coincidentally right around the time my bank account started draining, screeched to a halt in the loading zone. It was parked crookedly, aggressive and hasty. Showtime, I thought. I let my shoulders slump. I let my head low to the side. I started the tremor in my right hand, a rhythmic shaking that rattled the armrest of the wheelchair. I wasn't Harold Foster, the engineer, anymore. I was Harry, the burden, the problem, the vegetable. The car doors flew open. Megan was out first. She was wearing a camel-colored coat that probably cost more than my first car, her hair perfectly blown out, her makeup flawless despite the early hour. She looked like the picture of a concerned, affluent daughter-in-law. "Oh, Dad!" she cried out before she even reached the curb. Her voice was high, frantic, performing for the nurses and the security guard standing nearby. "Dad, you scared us to death." She rushed over and threw her arms around me. The scent of her expensive perfume was suffocating. It smelled like gardenias and lies. "Where did you go?" She sobbed against my neck. "We were looking everywhere. We thought you were asleep in your room, and then you were just gone." You wandered off again. It was a master class in gaslighting. In 2 sentences, she had rewritten history. I had wandered off. I was the one who got confused. She was the victim. I let out a low, confused moan. "Cold," I mumbled, slurring my words. "So cold." Brian was behind her. He didn't hug me. He stood a few feet away, his fists clenched at his sides, his jaw tight. He looked exhausted and furious. He was wearing sweatpants and a hoodie, clearly thrown on in a panic. His eyes darted around, checking for police, checking for social workers. "Let's just get him in the car," Brian growled, stepping forward. "We don't need a scene." Brenda stepped between Brian and me. "I need a signature Mr. Foster discharge papers and a confirmation that you are taking him back to his primary residence." Brian snatched the clipboard from her. Yeah, he is coming home. We have nurses set up. It won't happen again." He scribbled his name, the pen tearing through the paper. He shoved the clipboard back at Brenda. "Grab him, Megan." Brian snapped. "Brian?" Megan pulled back from her fake hug. Her eyes met mine for a second. There was no warmth there, only calculation. She was assessing me, checking to see if the poison had done any permanent damage, or if I was still lucid enough to be a problem. "Come on, Dad," she said, her voice dropping to a steel whisper only I could hear. "Get in the car and shut up." I let them hoist me out of the wheelchair. I made my legs heavy, stumbling, leaning my full weight on Brian. He grunted, disgusted by my touch. "Jesus, he smells like antiseptic. And old man," he muttered to Megan as they shoved me into the back seat. I collapsed onto the leather seat, letting my head fall back. Brian slammed the door hard enough to shake the frame. He jumped into the driver's seat, Megan in the passenger side. He gunned the engine and peeled out of the hospital lot, running a red light as we turned onto the main road. The ride home was tense. Brian drove with one hand on the wheel, the other gripping his phone. "Is the house ready?" he asked Megan, his eyes watching me in the rearview mirror. "Yes," she hissed. I finished staging the downstairs at 4 a.m. The cleaners are coming at 8:00 for a final polish. The realtor arrives at 9:00. What do we do with him? Brian jerked his head toward me. "We can't have him drooling on the sofa when the cash buyers show up." "I will give him a booster," Megan said calmly. "A double dose of the sedative." "We will put him in the back room. I will tell the realtor he is recovering from a flu and is contagious. No one will go in there. A double dose." They were planning to knock me out cold, maybe permanently. "Who is he?" I mumbled from the back seat, pointing a shaking finger at the back of Brian's head. "Who is the driver?" Megan turned around, a fake pitying smile plastered on her face. "That is Brian, Dad, your son. Remember, you're having a bad day." "Brian?" I repeated, testing the word like it was foreign. "Brian is a good boy," Brian snorted. "He is totally gone. His brain is mush. The cold must have fried whatever circuits were left." "Good. That makes this easier." We pulled into the driveway of 42 Oakwood Lane. The house looked beautiful in the morning light. The snow from the storm blanketed the roof, pristine and white. But in the front yard, sticking out of a snowbank like a dagger, was the sign, "Open house today." 10 Tart 2. They dragged me out of the car. They didn't bother with the act anymore. The street was empty. No neighbors to impress. They marched me to the front door, Brian's grip on my arm bruising. Inside, the house smelled of lemon pledge and fresh baking cookies, a realtor's trick to make buyers feel at home. It was sickening. "Take him to his room," Brian ordered. "I need to check the basement." Megan led me down the hallway to the first-floor master suite. My suite. The one I had designed specifically for my aging knees. The one I was supposed to die in. She opened the door. I stopped. I didn't have to fake the shock. My room was gone. My heavy oak bed frame, the one Catherine and I had bought for our 25th anniversary, was gone. My drafting table, cluttered with blueprints and sketches, was gone. My bookshelves filled with history books and engineering manuals were gone. In their place was a generic, soulless room. A sleek glass desk stood where my bed had been. A generic abstract painting hung where Catherine's portrait used to be. A lonely, uncomfortable-looking office chair sat in the corner. They had turned my bedroom into a home office. It was the final eraser. They hadn't just moved my things. They had purged them. There was not a single trace that Harold Foster had ever lived here. Where is my bed? I asked, my voice trembling. Megan pushed me inside. We moved it. Dad, we are redecorating. Remember we talked about this? You said you wanted a change? I never said that. It is better this way, she said, her voice tight. Less clutter. Good for your mind. Now sit down. She pointed to a small folding cot set up in the far corner of the walk-in closet. That was my place now. A cot in the closet hidden away like a dirty secret. Sit, she commanded. I am going to get your medicine. You need to sleep, Dad. You have had a big night. I shuffled to the cot and sat down. The mattress was thin. I could feel the cold floor through it. Megan left the room, closing the door but not locking it. She didn't need to lock it. Where would a senile old man go? As soon as her footsteps faded down the hall, I reached into the inside pocket of my suit jacket. My fingers closed around the cold metal of the digital voice recorder Sarah had given me. I pulled it out. The red light blinked once recording. I slid it under the pillow of the cot, positioning it so the microphone faced the door. Then I waited. I heard them in the kitchen. The clinking of glass. The sound of a pill bottle rattling. Make sure it's enough. Brian's voice drifted down the hall. I do not want him waking up in the middle of a tour. Don't worry, Megan replied. I am crushing 3 of them into the milk. He will be out for 12 hours minimum, and if his heart gives out well, he is 70. It happens. I gripped the edge of the cot. My knuckles turned white. They were discussing my murder while making coffee. The door handle turned. I quickly lay back, curling into a fetal position, my eyes half closed. Megan walked in. She was holding a steaming mug of milk, the same mug she used every night. Here, Dad, she said, her voice sickly sweet. Drink this. It will warm you up. It is your special milk. I sat up slowly, my hands shaking violently. I reached for the mug. Thank you, Megan, I whispered. You are such a good girl. She smiled. It was the smile of a shark. Just drink it all, Dad. Every drop. I brought the mug to my lips. The smell was familiar. Warm milk, nutmeg, and the faint, bitter, chemical undertone of death. I pretended to take a sip, but I kept my lips tight. I made a swallowing sound. Good, she said. Now finish it. I will wait. I need to use the bathroom first, I said, looking at the ensuite bathroom door. My stomach. She sighed, annoyed. Fine, but take the mug with you and be quick. The cleaners are coming. I shuffled into the bathroom and closed the door. I locked it. I poured the milk into the sink. The white liquid swirled down the drain, carrying the poison away. I ran the tap for a second to rinse the residue. Then I splashed water on my face, rubbing my eyes to make them look red and heavy. I unlocked the door and stepped out, holding the empty mug. All gone, I said, handing it to her. She looked inside the mug. Empty. She smiled, a genuine look of relief and triumph. Good boy, she said, patting my cheek. Now lie down. Go to sleep. I lay back on the cot. I let my eyelids flutter. I let my breathing slow down, become heavy and rhythmic. Megan watched me for a full minute. She waved her hand in front of my face. I didn't flinch. Out like a light, she whispered to herself. She turned and walked out, leaving the door slightly ajar. I waited 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5. I opened my eyes. The house was buzzing with activity. The vacuum cleaner started up. Brian was shouting instructions to someone on the phone. They were getting ready to sell my life. I reached under the pillow and checked the recorder. Still running. I lay there in the dark closet, listening to the sounds of my own eraser. But this time I wasn't afraid. I wasn't confused. I was the Trojan horse. I was inside the walls. And they had just invited the enemy to sleep in their house. Tomorrow, when the doors opened, I would not be the only one leaving this house. The darkness of the walk-in closet was absolute, save for the thin line of yellow light bleeding in from under the door. I lay on the folding cot, my body rigid, my breathing shallow and controlled. The air smelled of cedar chips and mothballs, a scent that usually reminded me of winter coats and seasonal storage. But tonight it smelled like a prison cell. My hand was tucked under the flat, lumpy pillow, my fingers curled around the small, cold rectangle of the digital voice recorder Sarah had slipped into my pocket at the hospital. The red recording light was taped over with black electrical tape to prevent any glow from giving me away. But I could feel the device humming slightly, capturing every vibration in the silent house. It was 11 at night. The house should have been asleep, but it wasn't. From the living room just down the short hallway, I heard the pop of a cork. Champagne. My son and his wife were celebrating. They were toasting to their good fortune, to the sale of the house, to the windfall that would erase their debts and fund their fantasies. They were toasting to my eraser. I shifted slightly, wincing as my bruised hip dug into the metal frame of the cot. I needed to hear them. I needed the recorder to hear them. This wasn't just about eavesdropping anymore. This was about building a coffin nail by nail out of their own words. I slid the recorder out from under the pillow and placed it on the floor as close to the door gap as I dared. Then I lay back and listened. Brian's voice floated down the hall, slurring slightly. He was drunk. I could tell by the heavy, flat vowels. "Tomorrow's the big day, babe." He said 1000. The realtor said the couple from the city is bringing a cash offer, $850,000, no contingencies. Cash, Megan purred. Her voice was lighter, sharper. It sounded like the clinking of coins. "We can pay off the bookie by noon. We can pay off the car. We will be free, Brian, finally free." There was a pause, the sound of glass hitting a coaster. Then Brian's voice dropped, becoming anxious, the paranoia of the guilty creeping in. "But what about him?" Brian asked. "What about the old man?" I held my breath. This was it. "What about him?" Megan asked dismissively. "He is in the closet, Mag. He is right there. What if he wakes up? What if he starts screaming when the buyers are here? What if he flurs out into the living room in his pajamas, drooling and talking about his dead wife? It will kill the sale. Nobody wants a house that comes with a senile squatter." "He won't wake up," Megan said. Her voice was calm, terrifyingly clinical. It was the voice of a nurse who knew exactly how much medication it took to stop a heart. "How do you know Brian pressed? Because I am going to give him a booster tonight," she said. "A heavy one." I ground up 4 of the blue pills and mixed them with the arsenic solution. "Jesus, me," Brian whispered. 4 pills. That could stop his heart. He is 70. Megan laughed. It was a soft, cold sound. "So what if it does?" "Brian, think about it. If he wakes up tomorrow, he has a problem we have to hide. If he doesn't wake up well, then he is a tragedy. A tragic natural passing in his sleep." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the drafty closet. They weren't just hoping I would disappear, they were actively discussing the benefits of my death. "And if he dies?" Megan continued, her voice taking on a dreamy quality. "The house sale goes through as an estate sale. It might take a month longer, sure, but we get the house money and we get the policy." "The insurance," Brian said. "The insurance," Megan confirmed. $1 million, Brian, double indemnity for accidental death. Though a heart attack and sleep is standard payout. $1 million plus the house. That is nearly $2 million. We could go to Europe. We could buy that villa in Tuscany Annie you always talk about. We could buy a Ferrari. We wouldn't just be debt-free. We would be rich." Rich. The word hung in the air, heavy with greed. I lay there, my heart pounding a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. They were selling my life for a villa in Tuscany Annie. They were trading my 40 years of hard work for a sports car. "Do it," Brian said. His voice was no longer anxious. It was resolved. "Go give it to him. Make sure he drinks it all." I scrambled to grab the recorder, shoving it back under the pillow. I rolled onto my side, facing the wall, pulling the thin blanket up to my chin. I forced my breathing to become deep and ragged, the breathing of an old, sick man. Footsteps approached the door. Soft, padded footsteps. Megan. The door creaked open, a wedge of light sliced across the room, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. "Dad," she whispered. I didn't move. I let out a soft snore. "Dad, wake up. It is time for your milk." She touched my shoulder. Her hand was cold. I groaned, shifting sluggishly, blinking my eyes open as if waking from a deep slumber. I looked at her. She was backlit by the hallway light, a silhouette of a woman holding a steaming mug. To anyone else, she looked like an angel of mercy. To me, she looked like the Grim Reaper. "Megan." I mumbled, slurring my words intentionally. Is it morning?" "Not yet, Harry," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "It is late. You need your medicine to sleep through the night. You have a big day tomorrow." She knelt beside the cot. The smell of the warm milk hit me. Nutmeg and almond, and underneath it, the faint metallic tang of the poison. "Here," she said, pressing the mug into my trembling hands. "Drink up. It will make you feel better." I sat up, leaning back against the wall. I held the mug with both hands, letting it shake, letting a few drops spill onto the blanket. "I am not thirsty, Megan," I whined, playing the part of the petulant child. "Drink it," she commanded, her voice hardening for a split second before softening again. "Please, Dad." "For me?" "You want to be strong for Brian, don't you?" "For Brian," I repeated. "Yes, for my boy." I brought the mug to my lips. I tilted it. I let the warm liquid touch my tongue, keeping my throat closed tight. I puffed out my cheeks as if swallowing. Then I stopped. I pulled the mug away, coughing violently. "Hot," I gasped. "Too hot." Megan sighed an impatient sound. "It is not that hot. Here, let me blow on it." She reached for the mug. As she leaned forward, I jerked my hand, accidentally knocking her arm. "Oh, clumsy me," I muttered. She recoiled, checking her expensive sweater for stains. While her eyes were on her clothes, I tipped the mug. Right next to the cot in the corner of the closet was a large potted fern. It was one of Catherine's old plants, one of the few things Megan hadn't thrown out yet, probably because it was too heavy to move. I poured the milk into the dark soil. It soaked in, instantly disappearing into the earth. By the time Megan looked back up, the mug was empty. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand, smacking my lips. "All gone," I said, handing her the empty ceramic cup. She peered into the mug, checking the bottom. Satisfied, she stood up. "Good boy," she said. "That was a big dose. You're going to sleep very well tonight, Harry." "Very well." She patted my head, a gesture so condescending it made my skin crawl. "Sweet dreams, Dad," she whispered. She walked out, taking the mug, the evidence, with her. She closed the door, and this time I heard the distinct click of the lock from the outside. They were locking me in, ensuring the corpse would be found in the right place. I lay back in the darkness. The plant next to me would be dead by morning, its roots burned by the arsenic, but I would be alive. I heard them laughing in the living room again. "He drank it all." Megan said, her voice triumphant. "He is done, Brian." By 10 a.m. he will be a memory. "To the villa in Tuscany, Yanni," Brian toasted. To us, Megan replied. The house settled into a quiet hum. But the conversation in the living room shifted from logistics to something far more personal. Something that made my blood run colder than the blizzard outside. "We need to clear out the attic before the closing," Megan said, her voice muffled but distinct through the thin drywall. "What about all those boxes of his wife's stuff? The old clothes, the photo albums, that dusty old sewing machine." "Trash it," Brian replied instantly, without a moment's hesitation. "Just call a junk removal service." We don't have time to sort through 40 years of sentimental garbage. If it doesn't have a resale value, it goes in the dumpster. Garbage. He was talking about Catherine's life. He was talking about the hand-stitched quilts she made for him when he was sick with the flu in 4th grade. He was talking about the photo albums she had meticulously curated, labeling every birthday and every Christmas with her elegant handwriting. To him, the history of our family was just an obstacle between him and a payday. I squeezed my eyes shut, a single hot tear leaking out and tracking into my beard. I remembered the day Catherine and I bought this land. We had stood in the mud, holding hands, imagining the walls that would rise around us. She had said, "Harry, we are planting roots here. This isn't just wood and stone. It is a promise." Listening to them plan to bulldoze her memory gave me a strength I didn't know I possessed. It wasn't just about saving myself anymore. It was about honoring her. If I let them win, if I let them sell this house and burn her legacy for a gambling debt, I would be failing the only woman I ever loved. I reached out and touched the cold plaster of the wall next to the cot. "I am sorry, Kathy." I whispered into the darkness, my voice barely audible even to myself. "I raised a wolf, but I promise you I will not let him tear down the den." The sadness in my chest hardened into a diamond-sharp resolve. I wasn't just fighting for a deed or a bank account, I was fighting for the sanctity of the past. I checked the recorder one more time to ensure the red light was still taped over and hidden. Let them talk. Let them plan. Every word they spoke was another shovel of dirt on the grave they were digging for themselves. I reached under the pillow and clicked off the recorder. I had it. I had the conspiracy. I had the intent. I had the method. I lay there for a long time, staring at the sliver of light under the door. I thought about the open house tomorrow. I thought about the cash buyers. I thought about the look on Brian's face when he realized that the memory in the closet was about to walk out and burn his entire world to ash. Sleep came eventually, but it wasn't the deep, drugged sleep they had planned for me. It was the light, alert sleep of a soldier in a trench, waiting for the dawn, waiting for the battle. Tomorrow the house on Oakwood Lane would have an open house and I was going to be the main attraction. The morning sun sliced through the frosted window of the ensuite bathroom, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the cold air. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the silk tie that Sarah had smuggled in through the window at 4 in the morning, along with my suit. It was a black tie, the same one I had worn to Catherine's funeral 5 years ago. It felt appropriate. Today was a funeral of sorts. I was burying my son's future. I picked up the heavy, silver-headed cane Sarah had brought. I did not need it to walk. Not really. My ankle was wrapped tight, and the adrenaline coursing through my veins masked the pain entirely. No, the cane was not a crutch. It was a scepter. It was a weapon. It was a gavel. Outside the bathroom door, beyond the empty closet where I'd spent the night feigning sleep, the house was waking up. But it wasn't the slow, comfortable waking of a family home. It was the frantic, artificial bustle of a stage set being prepped for opening night. I heard the front door chime. It was 9:30. The realtor was here. "Hello, hello!" A bright professional voice called out. It must be Linda, the agent Brian had hired. She sounded like she smiled with too many teeth. "The house looks absolutely stunning, you two. I have 3 cash buyers lined up for the first hour alone. The market is hot, and at this price point, we are going to see a bidding war." "Cash buyers," Brian's voice replied. It was smooth, charming, the voice of the successful executive he pretended to be. "That is music to our ears, Linda. We are looking for a quick close. My transfer to London came through faster than expected, and we need to be on a plane by the 1st of the month." London. I almost laughed out loud in the bathroom. The only place Brian was going was a 6-8 cell in the county lockup, but the lie was smooth practiced. He had probably told it to himself so many times in the mirror that he believed it. I heard the click of heels on the hardwood floor. Megan! She was speaking now, her voice dripping with that fake, syrupy sweetness she reserved for people she wanted something from. We just want to find a lovely family who will appreciate the home as much as we have. She said, we have put so much love into this place. Love she called stripping my room bare and poisoning my milk. Love. I checked my watch. 9:50. The first guests would be arriving any minute. I unlocked the bathroom door silently. I cracked it open just a hair enough to hear clearly enough to see a sliver of the bedroom. The room was empty. The cot in the closet was empty. I had stripped the sheets and folded the blanket perfectly before retreating to the bathroom. To anyone glancing in, it would look like an empty storage space. The doorbell rang again, deeper this time. The guests were here. Welcome, welcome, Linda chirped. Please come in. Watch your step on the ice. We have booties for your shoes right here. I heard the murmur of voices, low, appreciative whistles, granite countertops. Brian was saying, we put them in last year, imported from Italy. Lie. I paid for those countertops 3 years ago, and the floors are original oak refinished last month. Megan added, lie. I refinished those floors on my hands and knees in 1985. They moved through the house like a colony of termites, consuming the history of my home and spitting out real estate buzzwords. I tracked their progress by the creaking of the floorboards. I knew every groan of this house. I knew which board in the hallway squeaked. I knew which step on the stairs was loose. They were in the living room, then the kitchen, then the dining room. I stood perfectly still, my hand gripping the silver head of the cane. I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. I didn't look like the fragile, confused old man they had thrown out last night. My beard was trimmed. My hair was combed back. The black suit fit me perfectly broad in the shoulders. I looked like the man who had built bridges. I looked like the owner, and this is the downstairs master suite, Linda announced. Her voice was getting closer. It was right outside the door. Brian's voice cut in a little too loud, a little too rushed. Currently, we are using it as a home office, but it is fully plumbed for a bedroom. Actually, Linda, maybe we should skip this room. It is a bit messy. We were packing boxes in there late last night. Nonsense, Linda laughed. Buyers need to see the square footage, and you said it was staged beautifully. I heard Megan's intake of breath. She was terrified. She thought I was in there Kamioma-os on the cot, or worse, dead. She thought opening that door would reveal a corpse to 3 couples looking for a starter home. It is okay, honey, Brian said, his voice straining with forced casualness. He was gambling. He was betting that even if I was there, I would be out cold. He could explain away a sleeping old man. He could say I was a sick uncle crashing for the night. Just open it, Linda. The door doorknob turned. I stepped back from the crack, positioning myself in the center of the bathroom, but leaving the door wide open. The bathroom was dark, the lights off, so I was just a shadow in the frame. The bedroom door swung open. Here we are, Linda said, gesturing with a flourish. A spacious, light-filled room with she stopped. Silence. Absolute confused silence. I could imagine the scene, the sleek glass desk, the generic art, and the open closet door revealing nothing. No cot, no old man, no body. Where's the Megan started her whisper, sharp with panic. She cut herself off. Where is what dear Linda asked the staging? Brian stammered. I thought we... He walked into the room. I could hear his heavy footsteps. He walked straight to the closet. He was looking for me. He was looking for the body he was sure he had created. I heard him gasp. It was a wet, terrified sound. He is gone, he whispered. Megan, he is gone. What do you mean gone? Megan hissed. Clear's throat. Rushing into the room, her heels clacking violently. He took enough pills to kill a horse. He cannot be gone. Excuse me? One of the buyers asked from the doorway. Is everything all right? Brian spun around, his voice pitching up into a manic laugh. Yes, yes, fine. Just we thought we left some boxes here. It is fine. Please come in. Look at the closet space. Huge closet space. He was unraveling. He was trying to sell a closet that 5 minutes ago he thought contained his father's corpse. Now I thought I raised my cane. I brought the tip down hard on the tile floor of the bathroom. Tap. The sound was sharp, loud, echoing in the tense silence of the bedroom. Everyone froze. Brian whipped his head toward the dark bathroom. Megan's hands flew to her mouth. Tap. I took a step forward, emerging from the shadows of the bathroom. Tap. I stepped into the light of the bedroom. The reaction was visceral. Megan let out a small, strangled scream and stumbled back, clutching Brian's arm. Brian turned the color of ash. His eyes bulged, looking at me as if I were a vengeful spirit risen from the grave. And in a way, I was. I stood tall, my posture rigid, my chin high. The funeral suit was immaculate. I looked at the group assembled in my bedroom. There was Linda, the realtor, holding a stack of brochures. There were 3 couples, young, hopeful, holding hands. And there were my son and daughter-in-law, looking like they were watching their own execution. I did not look at Brian. I did not look at Megan. I looked past them directly at the buyers. Good morning, I said. My voice was deep, resonant, the voice I used to command construction crews over the roar of jackhammers. It filled the room, bouncing off the empty walls. I apologize for the confusion. There seems to be a misunderstanding regarding the occupancy of this property. Brian found his voice. It was a squeak. Dad, you are awake. I turned my head slowly, fixing him with a stare that could have cut glass. I am very much awake, Brian. And I am very much alive, which must be a terrible disappointment to you considering the conversation I overheard last night about the life insurance payout. The buyers exchanged horrified glances. One of the wives took a step back, pulling her husband with her. Linda stepped forward, her professional smile faltering. Sir, I was told this was a vacant property. Who are you? I smiled. It was a cold, sharp smile. I am Harold Foster, I said. I am the man who built this house. I am the man who paid for it. And according to the deed registered with Cook County, I am the owner. Megan lunged forward, her face twisted in a mask of desperate fury. He's senile. Do not listen to him. He has dementia. He does not know what he is saying. Brian, get him out of here. He is ruining everything. She reached for me. She actually reached out to grab my arm to drag me away, like she had done so many times before. But this time I didn't stumble. I lifted the cane and pointed it directly at her chest. The silver tip stopped inches from her expensive camel coat. Do not touch me, I said. The command was absolute. She froze. I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket. Brian flinched, as if he thought I was pulling a gun. I pulled out a folded sheath of papers. The toxicology report, the deed, and the transcript of the recording I had made the night before. I am not senile Megan, I said, tossing the papers onto the glass desk. The sound of them hitting the surface was like a gunshot, and this house is not for sale. I looked at the buyers. I suggest you leave, I told them. Unless you want to be witnesses to a felony arrest because the police are on their way. Pandemonium broke out. The buyers scrambled for the door, pushing past Linda. Linda looked at the papers on the desk, then at Brian, her eyes wide with realization. Brian sank to his knees. He didn't fall. He just crumpled. The strings of his puppet life finally cut. But Megan didn't crumble. She stared at the papers and then she stared at me. And in her eyes, I saw the final desperate calculation of a trapped animal. She wasn't done yet. And neither was I. The silence in the room was heavy, a suffocating blanket that smothered the cheerful background music Brian had playing on the smart speaker. My son stood there, his face the color of old ash, his mouth opening and closing like a fish pulled from the water. He looked at me, then at the closet, then back at me, his brain unable to reconcile the corpse he expected with the furious living man standing before him. Dad. He finally choked out the word sounding foreign on his tongue. Dad, how are you doing this? I did not answer him. He did not deserve an answer. Instead, I turned my attention to the three couples huddled near the doorway, clutching their brochures like shields. They looked terrified, caught in a family crossfire they did not understand. Linda the realtor looked like she was about to faint. I took a step forward, the silver tip of my cane clicking sharply on the hardwood floor. It was a sound of authority, the sound of a gavel striking a bench. Good morning, everyone. I said, my voice projecting clear and strong, filling the space that used to be my sanctuary. I apologize for the interruption to your tour. I know you were told this property is vacant. I know you were told it is ready for immediate occupancy. I paused, letting my gaze sweep over the potential buyers. However, I continued, my voice dropping an octave, becoming harder. I am Harold Foster. I built this house with my own hands in 1982. I paid for every brick, every beam, and every shingle. And despite what my son and his wife have told you, I am still the legal owner of this home. A murmur went through the group. One of the men, a young father holding his wife's hand, looked at Brian. Is this true? He asked. Is he the owner? Brian stammered, wiping sweat from his forehead. No, of course not. The title is in my name. I have the papers. This is just... He trailed off, unable to finish the lie while staring into my eyes. But Megan found her voice. She recovered from her shock with the speed of a striking cobra. She lunged between me and the buyers, her arms spread wide as if she were trying to herd them away from a dangerous animal. Do not listen to him. She shrieked, her voice shrill and desperate. She turned to the buyers. A frantic plastic smile plastered on her face. I am so sorry, everyone. This is my father-in-law. He is very sick. He has advanced Alzheimer's. He has severe dementia. He wanders off from his care facility and breaks in here sometimes. He thinks it is still 1982. She spun back to me, her eyes flashing with a murderous light. Dad, you are having an episode. She hissed, grabbing my arm with a grip like a vice. You need to sit down. You do not know what you are saying. You are confusing these nice people. She looked at Brian. Help me, Brian. Get him out of here. He is scaring the clients. Brian took a step forward, emboldened by her lie. Yes, that is it. He is sick. Come on, Dad. Let's get you back to bed. You are tired. You are talking nonsense. They were doing it again, right in front of witnesses. They were trying to erase my reality, to paint me as a broken, senile old man, so they could discard me. But I was ready this time. I wrenched my arm free from Megan's grip with a strength that surprised her. She stumbled back, her high heels slipping on the polished floor. I am not having an episode, Megan, I boomed. And I am certainly not confused. I reached into my jacket pocket. Brian flinched, perhaps thinking I had a weapon. In a way, I did. I pulled out the folded toxicology report from St. Mary's Hospital. I snapped it open, the crisp paper crackling in the tense air. Dementia, I asked, holding the paper up for the buyers to see. Is that what you call it? Because Dr. Patel at the emergency room calls it poisoning. I took a step toward the buyers, holding the report out. Read it. I commanded the young man who had spoken earlier. Read the highlighted line. The man hesitated, then leaned forward. Benzodiazepines, he read aloud, his voice trembling. And arsenic. Arsenic, I repeated, turning to look at Megan. Her face had gone completely white, her makeup standing out like a mask. You told everyone I was losing my mind. I said, my voice cold and steady. You told the neighbors I was forgetting things. You told my friends I was aggressive. But all the while you were crushing pills into my milk. You were slipping poison into my soup. You were chemically lobotomizing me so you could steal my life savings and sell my house out from under me. Liar. Megan screamed. She looked wild now, her hair coming loose from its perfect bun. He is lying. He is paranoid. That is part of the disease. He makes things up. You want proof? I asked. I reached into my other pocket. I pulled out the small digital voice recorder. It looked like a harmless black box, but it contained the end of their world. I recorded this last night, I said to the room. While I was lying on a cot in that closet pretending to be asleep, waiting for the poison you gave me to stop my heart. Megan lunged for the device. Give me that, she screeched. I raised my cane and cracked it against her wrist. She yelped and recoiled, clutching her hand. I pressed the play button. I turned the volume up to the maximum. The sound of static filled the room. Then, clear as a bell, Brian's voice floated out. If he wakes up tomorrow, he is a problem we have to hide. If he doesn't wake up well, then he is a tragedy. The buyers gasped. Linda covered her mouth with her hand. Then, Megan's voice cold and calculating. I ground up 4 of the blue pills and mixed them with the arsenic solution. If he dies, the house sale goes through as an estate sale. We get the house money and we get the policy. $1 million and I let it play. I let every damning word hang in the air. I let them hear the clinking of glasses as they toasted to their villa in Tuscany over my dead body. I clicked the stop button. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a tomb. I looked at Brian. He was shaking, tears streaming down his face, not from sorrow, but from the terrifying realization that his life was over. I looked at Megan. She wasn't crying. She was staring at the recorder with a look of pure, unadulterated hatred. Alzheimer's? I asked softly. Or attempted murder? I turned back to the buyers. This house is a crime scene, I told them. And unless you want to be deposed as witnesses in a homicide investigation, I suggest you leave. Now, they did not need to be told twice. The young couple grabbed their coats and ran. The other buyers followed, pushing past each other to get out the front door. Linda, the realtor, looked at me, then at Brian, her face pale. I am going to go, she whispered. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. She fled, leaving the front door wide open. The cold winter air rushed in, just cleansing the house of the smell of cookies and lies. We were alone. Me, my son, and the woman who had turned him into a monster. Brian fell to his knees. He put his head in his hands and began to sob, a pathetic mooing sound. Megan stood her ground. She looked at the door, calculating the distance. She was thinking about running. Do not bother Megan, I said, reading her mind. You cannot outrun this. She looked at me, her lip curling in a snarl. You old bastard. You should have just died. It would have been so much easier. And there it was, the final truth. No more masks, no more fake concern, just the raw, ugly greed that had been rotting my family from the inside out. I gripped my cane tighter. I am sorry to disappoint you, I said, but I am still here. And now it is my turn. The chaos in the driveway was visible through the large bay windows of the living room. The last of the buyer's sedans skidded on the ice as it peeled away the driver, not even bothering to look back at the beautiful colonial house that had just turned into a house of horrors. Linda, the realtor, was frantically shoving her brochures into her tote bag, her hands shaking so badly she dropped her keys twice. She muttered something about liability and licenses before sprinting out the front door, leaving it wide open to the biting winter wind. The cold air rushed in, swirling the expensive staging curtains and chilling the sweat on Brian's forehead. We were left in the vacuum of the aftermath. The silence was not peaceful. It was the heavy pressurized silence of a bomb that has stopped ticking and is waiting for the trigger. Brian was still on his knees staring at the floorboards as if trying to read a map that could lead him out of this nightmare. Megan stood by the fireplace, her chest heaving, her eyes darting from the open door to the back exit, calculating a run that she knew she couldn't make. Then the sirens cut through the morning air. They didn't wail. They chirped, short and authoritative, signaling arrival. Two police cruisers pulled up to the curb, their blue and red lights reflecting off the pristine snow, turning the white world into a strobe-lit crime scene. A black sedan followed them, parking with precision right behind Brian's SUV. Sarah Jenkins stepped out of the sedan. She didn't look like a niece coming for a visit. She looked like an executioner. She wore a long wool coat and carried a thick leather briefcase, flanked by two uniformed officers and a detective in a plain trench coat. She walked up the driveway, her boots crunched on the ice, a rhythmic sound of approaching judgment. Brian looked up, his eyes widening. "Sarah," he whispered. "Sarah, help us. He is crazy. He is making things up." Sarah didn't even look at him. She walked straight into the living room, bringing the smell of ozone and winter with her. The officers fanned out, blocking the exits. The detective stepped forward, his eyes scanning the room, landing on the voice recorder that was still sitting on the glass desk. Sarah walked over to me. She looked at my face, checking for strain, then nodded once. She turned to the desk and picked up the deed document I had thrown there earlier. She smoothed it out with a calm, deliberate motion. "Megan Bryan," she said, her voice level and terrifyingly professional. "I believe you missed a very important clause in the paperwork when you were so busy planning your European vacation." She held up the document. The sunlight hit the paper, illuminating the dense legal text. According to Illinois state law, specifically, the reversion clause in the life estate agreement, signed in 2018, any attempt to forcefully remove the life tenant or any action that endangers their well-being renders the transfer of title null and void. She looked at Brian, her eyes cold. "By throwing your father out into a blizzard with no coat and no phone, and by listing this property for sale without his consent, you triggered the reversion." "What does that mean?" Brian stammered, trying to stand up but finding his legs too weak. "It means," Sarah said, dropping the paper back onto the desk, "that as of last night at 10:42 p.m. when you locked that door, the ownership of this house automatically reverted to Harold Foster." She pointed at the walls, the ceiling, the floor. "You do not own this house, Brian. You are trespassing. And considering the toxicology report and the recording, you are doing a lot worse than that." The detective stepped forward, pulling a pair of handcuffs from his belt. The metallic ratchet sound was loud in the room. "Megan Foster," he said. Megan backed away, hitting the mantel of the fireplace. No, you can't. It is his word against mine. He is senile. He confused the pills. He did it to himself." "We have the recording, ma'am," the detective said, his voice bored, unimpressed. "And we have the blood work from St. Mary's. You are under arrest for attempted aggravated battery, elder abuse, and conspiracy to commit murder." He reached for her arm. Megan screamed. It wasn't a word, just a raw sound of fury and denial. She tried to slap his hand away, but the officer was faster. He spun her around and slammed her against the wall, not gently. "You have the right to remain silent," he recited, clicking the cuffs onto her wrists. "It was his idea." Megan shrieked, twisting her head to look at Brian. "He wanted the money. He has gambling debts. He made me do it. He said the old man was useless." Brian watched her, his mouth hanging open in betrayal. You said we needed the villa. You mixed the milk." The second officer moved toward Brian. "Brian Foster, you are under arrest for financial fraud, conspiracy, and endangerment of a vulnerable adult. Turn around and place your hands behind your back." Brian didn't turn around. He collapsed. He dropped to his knees again, hitting the floor hard. He looked at the officer, then at Sarah, and finally his gaze crawled up to meet mine. He didn't look like a man anymore. He looked like a terrified child who had broken a window and was waiting for the punishment. Tears streamed down his face, mixing with the snot running from his nose. "Dad," he wailed. It was a pathetic, high-pitched sound. "Dad, please. You can't let them take me." I stood there leaning on my cane, watching the boy I had raised, the boy I had taught to fish, the boy I'd carried on my shoulders. I looked for any spark of the son I loved, but all I saw was a stranger who had valued my death at 1,000,000. "I am your son," Ryan sobbed, crawling toward me on his knees. He reached out and grabbed the leg of my trousers, burying his face in the fabric. "I am your little boy. Please, Dad, tell them it was a mistake. Tell them I didn't mean it." She x-rayed me. She x-rayed my mind. She made me do it. I was weak, Dad. "You know I am weak." I looked down at him. I felt the weight of his head against my leg. For a second, a fleeting heartbeat. I felt the old instinct, the instinct to protect, to fix, to pay the debt, and hush the scandal and save him from the consequences of his own actions. But then I remembered the cold. I remembered the wind cutting through my thin sweater. I remembered the taste of the bitter milk. I remembered him asking, "Is he dead yet?" I reached down. Brian's sobbing hitched, thinking I was going to stroke his hair, thinking I was going to save him. I took his hands and peeled them off my leg. My grip was iron. I pushed him away firmly, creating a distance that could never be bridged again. I stepped back. "You are not my son," I said, my voice void of any emotion. "Not anymore. My son died last night in the storm. You are just a man who broke into my house." Brian stared at me, his eyes wide, realizing for the first time that the bank of fatherly forgiveness was closed. The vault was empty. "Get him out of my house," I said to the officer. The officer hauled Brian to his feet. Brian hung limp, sobbing uncontrollably as they dragged him toward the door. Megan was already outside, being shoved into the back of a cruiser, still screaming curses at the world. Sarah stood beside me watching them go. She didn't say anything. She just reached out and took my hand, squeezing it tight. The house was quiet again. But it wasn't empty. It was filled with the clean, cold air of winter. And for the first time in 6 months, it was filled with the truth. I looked around the room at the staged furniture, at the fake art. It didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a battlefield where I had won the war, but lost everything that mattered. But I was alive. And as I watched the police cars pull away, their lights fading into the distance, I knew that was enough. The flashing blue and red lights of the police cruisers danced across the walls of the living room, illuminating the pathetic figure of the man who used to be my son. Brian was clinging to my leg, his expensive suit trousers stained with floor wax, and tears his face a mask of utter ruin. He was begging, babbling about mistakes and second chances, about family and blood. I looked down at him, but I did not see the 38-year-old man kneeling on the floor. I saw the shadow of the man who had stood in the kitchen doorway 3 nights ago. I saw the sneer on his face as he threw his father into a blizzard. I heard the lock click shut. I heard the laughter on the phone line when he asked the nurse if I was dead yet. That man, the one who could toast to my demise with champagne, was the real Brian. This weeping creature at my feet was just a coward who had been caught. The silence in my heart was absolute. The fatherly instinct to protect, to forgive, to fix everything was gone. It had frozen to death out there on the highway, somewhere between my house and the gas station. I reached down and grabbed Brian's wrists. My hands, strengthened by 40 years of construction work, were still strong. I peeled his fingers off my pant leg one by one. He tried to hold on his grip, desperate, but I was relentless. I pushed him back, creating a physical distance that mirrored the emotional chasm between us. He looked up at me, his eyes wide and wet, searching for a flicker of the dad who used to coach his little league team. "I do not have a son." I said, my voice flat and devoid of any warmth. It was not a shout. It was a statement of fact, like stating the load limit of a steel beam. My son died the moment he decided my life was worth less than a kitchen renovation. Brian flinched as if I had slapped him. "Dad, please," he whispered. "You are not my family." I continued standing tall, my cane resting firmly on the floor. "You are just a stranger who broke into my home. You are a trespasser, and you have overstayed your welcome." I looked at the police officer standing uncomfortably by the door. "Officer," I said, "please remove this man from my property." The officer stepped forward, grabbing Brian by the arm. "Come on, son, let's go. Don't make it harder than it is." Brian let out a wail that echoed through the empty, staged house. He dragged his feet as they hauled him out his head, turning back to look at me one last time, but I had already turned away. I walked to the window and watched as they shoved him into the back of the patrol car right next to Megan. They were finally going somewhere together, just like they wanted. Not to a villa in Tuscany, but to the county jail. As the cars pulled away, fading into the gray morning light, Sarah walked up beside me. She didn't say a word. She just took my hand and squeezed it. We stood there in the silence of the house that was finally truly mine again. But as I looked around at the fake art and the rented furniture, I realized something. This wasn't a home anymore. It was a crime scene. It was a mausoleum of bad memories. I did not want to die here. I did not want to live here. 1 month later, the sold sign went up in the front yard. I sold the house on Oakwood Lane for $875,000 cash. It went to a nice young couple with a baby on the way. A family that would fill the walls with new happy memories, scrubbing away the stain of betrayal that Brian and Megan had left behind. I took the money from the house plus the settlement from the civil lawsuit Sarah had filed against Brian's assets. And I did something Catherine and I had talked about for 40 years but never did. I went to the dealership on the edge of town and bought a 40 FD Class A motorhome. It was a palace on wheels with leather seats, a king-sized bed, and a windshield that offered a panoramic view of the world. I didn't stop there. I went to the local shelter. I asked for the dog that had been there the longest, the one nobody wanted. They brought me a golden retriever named Rusty. He was 5 years old, a bit gray in the muzzle with sad eyes and a limp in his back leg. He'd been abandoned by a family who moved away and left him behind. "We're going to get along just fine, buddy," I told him. Today the sun is setting over the rim of the Grand Canyon, painting the rocks in shades of fire and gold that no camera could ever capture. I am sitting in a folding chair outside my RV, a glass of good red wine in my hand. Rusty is sleeping at my feet, chasing rabbits in his dreams. The air is crisp and clean, and for the first time in a year, I can breathe. I reach into my pocket and pull out a postcard I bought at the gift shop. It has a picture of the canyon on the front, vast and deep and beautiful. I take a pen and write the address of the State Correctional Center in Illinois. I address it to inmate Brian Foster. I do not write a long letter. I do not ask how he is doing. I do not tell him I miss him. I simply write, "Thank you for pushing me out of the house that night. If you hadn't, I would have died in that room without ever seeing this. You tried to end my life, but you only ended yours. I found the world." I stamped the card and set it on the table. Tomorrow, Rusty and I are heading west. Maybe California, maybe Oregon. It doesn't matter. The road is long, and for the first time in my life, I am truly free. The lesson I learned, and the one I hope you take from my story, is that family is not defined by whose blood runs in your veins, but by who is willing to bleed for you. We often cling to toxic relationships because of history obligation or the fear of being alone. But sometimes the people who are supposed to love us the most are the ones holding the knife. Trust your instincts. If you feel you are being erased, you probably are. Do not be afraid to walk away from people who hurt you, even if you gave them life. Protecting your peace, your dignity, and your safety is not selfish. It is necessary. It is never too late to restart your life, even at 70. Sometimes you have to lose everything you thought you needed to find everything you actually wanted. If this story touched you, please hit that like button and Clear's Throat subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you know. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to cut ties with a family member to save yourself? I read every single comment. Until next time, keep your eyes on the road and your heart open to the truth.